and welcome. We have a very special guest today in our studio. She is Professor Amita Singh. She is a renowned academic with expertise in law, governance, and public policy. She was a former professor of JNU, at the same time, former Secretary General of NAPSIPAC. Welcome to the show, ma'am.
Thank you.
You have visited Barampur University earlier also, and this time you have come for the international conference. What is your perception about the university?
And seeing all the greenery around and blooming flowers, because I've come here at one of the best seasons. And, it's all color around. And, nice place to go for morning walks, watch the birds, nature in its most primordial form. Like today, it was so foggy, but this is not smoggy. So we enjoyed the smog as we walked through the forest lanes. And more than that, it's about the peace around. There is this little lake on the left of the guest house, and people around the local communities are also coming and interacting. Everyone seems to be, whether with degrees or not, they all seem to be very educated and very well behaved when we interact with them. So I feel very good actually coming to this university.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We would like to know about your journey, like how you incline towards law, governance, and public policy. The focus.
Wonderful question. And if you ask this to any academic who's gone from a very unitary subject to a very transdisciplinary subject, I think they would more or less say the same thing. That, you start from a very small silo and you start from political science with few interest areas which start growing when you teach in a college and you teach undergraduate classes. So you interact with variety of ideas, because undergraduate classes, I think, should be a must for every teacher. They should not start their journey into a good career from masters and research onward. They should start from teaching undergraduate classes, because that's where the raw ideas are. The raw ideas are then transformed and translated into some very solid ideas that reflect into the research projects and research that we take. And then they grow into their linkage with the relevance in society. Because every idea that a youngster brings to the college can be translated into very, very important social idea, because they're coming from the society. They are raw, they are sharing everything with their teacher. There is total democracy in the colleges where youngsters interact with teachers. Gradually, when they go into postgraduate classes, there also the interaction is very good. When they go into research, then some universities offer a huge democratic platform. But there are a number of universities which become very regimented about a lot of things. There are new regulations which are put over the researcher, and some researchers are able to cope up with it, others are not. And a large number of teachers in the higher education also get very regimented, like bureaucracy. Some are, I would not be hesitating to say that some are very regimented in their approach, forgetting that every student which is coming from a different background. Some have weak English, some have very good English. There is a great disparity on how they approach ideas and how they approach research. A training is required. But most of the teachers in higher education do not get so much time that they were getting in the colleges. So they are not able to interact with the time required by the student. So some students can cope up with it, others are not able to do all those readings suggested by the teacher. So somewhere in higher education, that kind of synchronization is required. So one is this, and then from there, when you go into a more transdisciplinary area, something that you want the student to reflect. Like, for example, this is a question which I always try to make others understand, because transdisciplinarity has also become an easy way to be a jack of all trades. So let us not confuse transdisciplinarity with a non meritorious approach to, or very preliminary approach to a subject. When I'm talking about transdisciplinarity, I mean that every student who's coming to research is reflecting a social area. They are very good in understanding the social area where they are coming from. And I think that the teachers should only broaden up that area with more academic inputs into it, more theoretical inputs into it, that the student is solid and is able to give back to the society for which it feels so strongly. And, for example, there was a student with me who back in Andhra Pradesh, his land was taken away. He was very upset that my parents are poor and the little land that they had is also being taken away. The compensation has not been given, and it's a very wrong time that the government has taken away the land. This is many years ago. And he said, "What can I do? Because I'm studying in JNU and my fees is very low, but even that I'm not able to pay because it's a crisis back home." And then, we managed his stay in JNU somehow. But back home, we are not able to connect to how, they have been dealing with the problem. But that student, after passing out from JNU and being empowered into research on how this process, the legal governance process, should be handled, he was able to do it very well. And now he's in a very good position in the same state. So, those are the kind of leaders we need to churn out from research. But how we do it depends a lot on the training of teachers. If you just implant teachers straight into the university without them getting into a very interactive dialogue with youngsters at the undergraduate level, I'm sure they will have problems, because they behave like IAS officers, administrators, and with a distancing from normal people, not having time to listen to the grievances of the students, and uh, comment on the lack of time, and the lack of resources in the university, because universities are not flooded with resources. We all have to manage with very small resources, and sometimes the teacher, for the empowerment of the student, has also to spend from one's own pocket. And one should be ready to do that. If it's a small amount and you're able to do that, I think teachers should be willing to do that. Somewhere it's only in teaching that we still have a very strong ethical foundation. When I have a comparative picture of the whole society, I can still stand up and confidently say that teaching, despite all its flaws, still stands to be one of the most ethical foundations of our society. And so, with pride, teachers should be ready to do that. So, if that answers your question, transdisciplinarity is automatic because you're dealing with concerns of the student and with focus on your student.
In your opinion, ma'am, what are the major challenges of governance for addressing climate change issue?
All right. Climate change, is a change. As I said yesterday in my speech, it's a change. And every change is not a very happy one. And one has to readapt one's life. You are happily living about expenditures, managing your life, everything seems good. And suddenly, by the time you step into the world of employment, those services are gone, because the world in its larger aspect is being slowly wiped out. The climate change is taking away a lot of things and giving back a lot of things which are not healthy to the climate. Climate means, I mean to say, socio-economic climate. Because the change is the unhappy one, adaptation is big. Adaptation means that we need to collaborate with those who facilitate our adaptation. That is where the problem of public policy comes in. Whether, of course, the government role should be an extremely important one. And when I say extremely important one, I come back to the same interaction, same philosophy that I talked about student and teacher. The government should be interacting with the local societies the way they expect the teacher to interact with their student. That means it should be physical. It should not be digitized. It should not be from a distance. It should not be, okay, I lent to you, the funds and you have to listen to the district magistrate. There must be regular supervision, regular interaction, and let the communities feel that they are in a decisive state and you decide for yourself because you are inhabiting this area. If you are inhabiting this area, then you are responsible for that. Their monitoring in the form of regimentation should be minimized. And there I come to the political science fundamental principle of subsidiarity. That these communities who are holding on to the resources, because, say, for example, mines, God has a very good system that wherever there is wealth in the ground, they are covered with very dense forests. So, to steal that wealth, that cover has to be removed. And the governments have been removing the covers and, getting into contractual situations about digging out all the wealth. And they go for Australian miners. There are lots of examples about it. They go for big machine, earth movers, and the local people who were inhabiting those areas, they are just watching from a distance. And this watching is like they don't get employment, they don't get food, they don't get habitation, the animals are lost, the trees are lost, which usufruct from the forest had been almost contributing, according to studies, number of studies, almost 30% of their monthly income. So they lose out on all fronts. It's like that famous saying, na khuda hi mila na bisale sanam na idhar ke rahe na udhar ke rahe. So obviously they go into a protest mode. And when they go into a protest mode, they are labeled as, that this is not a good community. You have to apply army and you have to apply CRPF and CISF and all the uniformed classes come over there. The dialogue goes missing. And I think that is just going against the principle of subsidiarity. Interestingly, I tell you, in Article 253G and further ahead, taking it to O, 253O, we have panchayats, number of 29 subjects, which the panchayats are supposed to do. And if you look at all of them, they have that community is the holder of their assets, they should be consulted, and the local any local industry should be through the panchayat, and including land management and land diversion, it should all be through the panchayats. But how much are we, the assessment of the last since the 73rd amendment came in 1992, if we take up the assessment, we see the panchayats are shrunken, getting gradually depleted in their power. And the more industrialization, the more development is scary for these local powers, because they become inversely proportional to each other. Why? Because the panchayats in the last, since 1992, I'll just mention three things. One is, there's been sarpanch, there's been 1, 2, 3 up sarpanch, and there have been regular meetings. The sarpanch relationship with the district magistrate and Jila Parishad is shrunken absolutely. They are waiting for appointment with the DC because the DC has become the head of the smart city projects. And the disaster management work, DC is the head. Sarpanchs are not even given the appointment to meet him. And they have absolutely no say in the DDMS because DDMS don't mention panchayats. It's just a casual mention in the Disaster Management Act of 2005, where they say so many agencies have to be consulted, and it's panchayat, one of them. So district disaster management authorities have not honored the sarpanch, or if not the panchayat, at least the sarpanch should have been, but no, not there. Since 1992, up sarpanchas in most of the states first got reduced to from 3 to 2 to 1. And in many panchayats, they are just ritually existing. They are non-functional. Up sarpanch, nobody even knows the up sarpanch. They are only their namesake. The third, the meetings that were to be held quarterly and 6 monthly now have gone casually missing for the whole year. Even in the whole year, like Haryana, agricultural state where panchayats are very strong, there, if you look at the wider framework, many panchayats have not had their meetings in the whole year. It's only when some crisis takes place and some lobbies within the panchayat come in. Worse than that, I'm coming to the other point. Worse than that, because we're talking about climate change. And, these are the people who need to, from the grassroots, they need to talk about climate change because that's where the climate change is sprouting into bigger volumes. The areas where the change of land use laws have been applied, not once, twice, but repeatedly. So there is this rich agricultural areas, and the builder, for example, this is an ex city. The builder goes to the DC and wants a contract for land and building up residential houses. The DC says that the rest of the area comes in the agricultural land, so you have to get the change of land use. And then this land will be yours. The change of land use occurs very easily, and it's not been a problem. Earlier, the panchayats just refused to give it because the panchayats were strong. And there were a lot of areas which were protected by the panchayats, including where the orchards were, the traditional harvesting system was growing, and some of the very crucial wells, their grazing grounds. But everything, due to change of land use, has got merged with the urban land. So they become urbanized. Now they've become urbanized, but in a large majority of these districts in almost all the states is almost a similar pattern here and there, little different. The government refuses or say delays the process of setting up a municipal corporation. These are the areas which are rural as well as urban. Change of land use has taken place. There are no institutions to govern the developmental cycles, the protection of the basic assets that still remain with the rural folks. Lal Dora land or rural areas where the village people had set up some of their local use industries. All that gets very surreptitiously veiled into a process that is taken away into urbanization. So the villager, without a wink of eye, suddenly finds himself absolutely excluded and stolen because they've been robbed of their fundamental assets. A large number of communities which were caste demarcated, in the sense the Kumhars and Bangis and Chamars and local herders and vegetable sellers. There are a large number of communities which may be differently labeled in different villages. They were the major people who lost because their ponds were lost, so they can't be potters. Their animals are lost, they can't sell milk. Their animals are lost, so cowherds and the bullocks and all the sale that they used to earn from, all that is lost. The problem is that when all this is taken away, there is no back end arrangement which is done to call anything like adaptation. What the government talks about adaptation in climate change is this form of an adaptation that you throw them out and you take away their resources, build major villas, multi crores. Now Gurgaon is all growing over the agricultural land, and I am definitely sure, and a lot of experts agree with me on the point, that India will be importing wheat and grains in few years from now, because the kind of almost 18% plus land which has been taken away in the last few years from rich agricultural states, where will that be compensated for? So, all this is growing into villas which are nothing less than 3 crores. And shamelessly, the kind of culture which is coming in, 100 crores, 150 crores, some very rich businessmen are buying these villas on the 7th floor, 10th floor, irrespective of the fact that Gurgaon is on zone 4 of earthquake. And the best, I just came across a book, The Rumbling Earth by C. Rajendran. Wonderful book, that speaks about the fact that who is stealing away our water, groundwater. And this is suicidal, because the moment you overdraw the groundwater for building up these cities called smart cities, what do? The rumbling, the rocks which are balancing the earth, they shake. And when they shake, no society, whatever development, can stay over it. So they would fall. I accepted, and lots of us accepted very strongly, the fact when Maradu apartments in Kochi were brought down by the Supreme Court order. And there are many of them in Gurgaon and other places, in Chennai, and a large number of them, which have flouted the environmental rules. And they are all now, stuck up in the Supreme Court because they flouted those rules. Coastal zone management laws have been flouted, number of other laws which exist. And none of the district magistrate or district town and country planner or the municipal commissioner has been sent to jail. Interestingly, they have earned their money, got that transferred out, and taken VRS or post retirement, and then working with multinational companies or with builders, and they are still earning money. We can have a climate change adaptation sans ethics to an impossibility. Ethics is fundamental to climate change adaptation. And then, further moving ahead, adaptation is a mischief. That word itself is a mischief. I continue to do violence on you, and you learn to adapt yourself to me. Doesn't that sound very mischievous? So, the mischief has to be stopped. To stop the mischief, we need to have laws and institutions that catch the corrupt at the grassroots and prevent this spread of unethical and clandestine stealing of resources of the poor and the marginalized at the grassroots. I would call them all marginalized at the grassroots, because each farmer has not more than 0.5 hectare. That's maximum that each farmer has a land holding of in India. And we can't call them rich farmers. They basically have problems, and those problems are not attended to. In fact, stealing of the resources is taking place. Weakening of the farmer means empowerment of the urban culture. And urban culture is dependent on this. See, the British folk, if you go back to the British policies, the bylaws, urban bylaws, very clearly mentioned. I have mentioned that in my book, which I wrote in 1987, Grassroots Concerns of Public Administration. And I have referred to that law where they said that each city should have a 20 kilometer around it radius of only the farms and the greens. But we only have cities now. You can move from here to Uttarakhand, move from here to Jaipur, to Chennai. You hardly have green areas. You only have urban people living in habitations there. You can't have so many habitations. Confine the habitations to a certain number of areas. And to do that, we have to have very strong land management laws and penalize the corrupt. And how do you find the corrupt? Identify the district magistrate. See, I'm also an advocate in the court, and I see, ironically, wherever I stand for my clients, I only find on the other side, because I take up certain number of cases of environment and animals, and I only see, those 5 people standing on the other side. And these 5 people, number one is the DC, Deputy Commissioner. Number 2, the Municipal Commissioner. Number 3, District Town and Country Planner. Number 4 is the Divisional Forest Officer. And number 5, guess who? The local SHO. And interestingly, the local SHOs in the last 5 years are becoming more and more powerful as compared to their commissioners. They are wearing the pants, and they are the ones who are ruling their area. And the commissioners go silent. They go silent. Despite the Police Act, Indian Police Act, still active, none of the SHOs, and very few SHOs, are actually put to investigations or interrogations by the commissioner. They are left to the ACPs, and ACP and SHOs are together. It's only the change in the police comes in, DCP onwards to the higher officers, where you can talk about ethics, you can talk about educated sense of public policies, you can talk about citizenry, civility. The ACP and below, the SHOs, are talking about local dadagiri. I will not, register your FIR. The other person sitting over there, why do you always come to get a FIR registered when your work is done in a complaint? And there's such a lot of difference between the two. So the criminal justice system has to be very strong for climate change adaptation. Ethics, criminal justice system, land management laws, and I come last to the most sensitive areas where judges don't want to listen, but actually judges are also extensions of our society. And trial court judges, and some of them, of course, their category goes decreasing as you move to High Court and further decrease to the Supreme Court. We need judges who decide from their brains but think from their hearts. If they are part of the society and they are placed on a chair of justice dispensation, then they should be sensitive to the role of justice dispensation, because they can't say that we are only looking at the black letter law, because the black letter law given in the acts and the constitution only reflect and indicate a periphery. You need to have your own mind and heart to understand how is it relevant to a particular case, to a particular plaintiff, and to a particular respondent. Only then can you act. And you should be a responsible person to see that your society doesn't sink into an enemy where these 5 culprits that I just mentioned rule and the others become slaves. And that is where the judges are not responsible. I'm not going to say that the gender plays a role, because I have interacted with a number of women judges in the trial court also, who have been very active in the family court, but when they are there in district and session judge, I find them as patriarchal as men. And I think it is because women think that by showing the manly traits, you will be promoted, maybe till the Supreme Court. It's a very, very unhappy terrain. And when we talk about climate change, I divert you to all the societal problems. And these are the institutional, legal, law, and governance problems, and the environment is left aside. No, environment is captive to these problems. If you eradicate these problems, there would be no climate change. I tell you the fact. Of course, there are lots of debates concerning each one of them, but we can definitely answer them one by one.
When we say about university or educational institute, which is a hub of information exchange, collaboration, research, so what role it plays for addressing climate change?
Oh, excellent question. But climate change is not to be brought about in a silo. You rightly mentioned, and I'm glad that you're talking about collaboration, coordination, and hand holding in dealing with climate change. See, the river, there are rivers that travel to 4,000 kilometers, coming from all the way from China upwards and down below Tibet and down below. Today we have a problem. China is making a dam on the Siang Valley, which is going to flood the Arunachal, and India is speeding up its own dam downstream so that it can control. Well, I don't know how this is going to affect. You invest millions and billions of dollars in damming these, rivers which have a natural flow. And never ever has man been successful in damming a river and preventing the river from just releasing and unleashing its anger when it wants to. Neither Ganga, take up any other, river, Krishna, Godavari, Narmada, and then go up to the international Yangtze, the one in China where the Three Gorges Dam is. You take up any river, the natural course of river cannot be dammed. And if governments come down to fighting a war over the rivers, I think that's the most foolish task that any government can do, whether China or any other country. Then what is the solution? Confidence building measures, person to person interaction. Chinese citizens are not enemies of Indian citizens. Indian citizens do very well when they interact with Chinese citizens in China. Similarly, we and Pakistani people have been great friends in universities. We've traveled so many times to Pakistan, Bangladesh, and person to person interaction, despite the wars going on, have been extremely pleasant. So that shows that there are number of people in all these countries who speak the same language of peace. That same language of peace need to be broadened up. When I say broadening up, I mean to say they need to be grow up. They need to grow. How can they grow? Allow academics, nice people, good people to visit these places. Don't block it by your visa. Don't block it by the power of a regimented state. Let it flow freely, because just as the river wants to flow freely, a citizen's aspirations of interacting with others wants to move freely. If I'm sitting here today and talking about a wider perspective, which appears to be very deep by some people, and they say that, you take up a lot of things together, it's not my doing. It's the doing of my university, JNU, and Delhi University, that offered me the opportunity to freely travel. I must have traveled Pakistan 5-6 times, and Bangladesh similar number of times. Stayed with them in all the conditions, good or bad, whatever the universities could offer, and we were so happy. We really enjoyed. And talk about any other country, in the neighborhood. Nepal, of course, has been extremely family like, and so is Pakistan. We still, some of the senior judges and professors over there, they are still my brothers and sisters, and many of them originated from my home place in Lucknow. So when we met over there, their mothers met, and we interacted. Now that era is over, sadly. because most of them have gone and retired and into, recluse, out of the society, not interacting, because this change and regimentation and shrinking of communication and interaction, coordination, collaboration is now reducing. And I can only say, with the experience that we gain, that this is not going to take away anyone. Nature is free. You can't save Kaziranga if you are not interacting with the upstream nations. You have to be friends with Nepal, you have to be friends with Bangladesh. And if it means losing a bit of your, big brotherly instinct, it's fine. Because power doesn't take you anywhere. Power takes you where Gaza is, Israel is. What did Israel gain out of it? Look at the Israel economy. Look at the people who've been destroyed. What is patriotism but humanism writ large? So I believe in that.
You have attended the 3 days international conference in Barampur University. What is your takeaway?
The takeaways, three very important. Let me put it in a priority. Number one is everyone is concerned about human security. And we need to redesign the concept of human security vis-a-vis the increasing number of disasters. So this institutionalized channeling of processes and law should get a priority. Number one. Everyone says that. And those who didn't say, there were some who said climate change is a hoax. There were some who came and said that. I don't know what made them say so. But I can say that human security is the concern. And this human security, everyone believed, has no place for military security. Because military security and environmental security are now combined. You open up the dams and you can flood a nation. You can starve a nation by not giving them water. You can destroy the livelihood. What are you going to destroy? You're going to destroying your own human race that looks a bit different from you, so you destroy them. Interspecies, human security also mentions interspecies relationship. Interspecies means when a disaster is about to occur, the fish come to the shore, the dogs start howling, the cats, the animals, they run to some place. They are indicators. If they are indicators, they're carrying life with them. Why don't you get those early warning systems into your system and plan your survival accordingly in togetherness? The collaboration is not something that is to be missed. It's fundamental in human security. We need to collaborate. All organizations, animal husbandry to home ministry to, all of them in between need to collaborate. Number two is the principle of subsidiarity, as I mentioned, that law and governance should very strongly apply that. And if you apply that, you would automatically translate legal processes and institutions in a more ethical manner so that empowerment at the grassroots takes place unhindered. Third is, which has not come up very strongly in the presentations that have gone by, but in a marginal way, everyone agrees to it because they all mentioned that animals are important and we need to protect them and all that. The government, despite all its hype about the cow and the bullocks and the desi breed and all, the laws that are needed, has not come up with any unified plan to combine interspecies or man-animal conflict that may take place and may enlarge in times to come, because the dense forests have already reduced enormously and the non-forested areas have come up with green trees, so which is useless. Dense forest reduction has taken place enormously, and that comes in the forest report of 2023. I presented yesterday the granular data. So that means the animals are exposed. They need to, find ways where to their food is not available, the balance of nature has been disturbed, and they move into the human areas. So the problem comes in. So why is this taking place? This is one aspect. The other aspect of animal care, animal attention, and laws is about the slaughterhouses. It is an established fact by WHO that if slaughterhouses are the main creators of the methane, the beef growing, they're the main creators of methane and CFC gases in the air, and we just reduce it by 50%, then we will have no problem of climate change. Interestingly, no problem of climate change. Just do away with 50% of the slaughterhouses. Why are slaughterhouses being pushed? Or why are they being, in a very regimented manner, becoming a communal issue? Politicians are turning it into a communal issue to churn vote, jate jate se kuch votes, let's earn some votes out of it. It's not a vote issue, it's a climate change issue. And have slaughterhouses if you really want and people desire, and it's indispensable. I'm a vegetarian, and I would prefer that the whole world becomes vegetarian, even though I know it will never be. It will never be, because the choice of food is an important thing, and I respect that for living in a society. But if you want to have the slaughterhouses, have it at the place where there is least transportation, least refrigeration, and least application of energy, because energy crisis and methane in the air is a major problem. So slaughterhouses, man-animal conflict, and laws for animals in the society so they have a respectable, and part of it is animal birth control laws. Nobody thinks about it because it's something like a very low level talk, that very scholarly people think that it's a very low level talk. But what happened in Katrina, when in 2006 hurricane came to Katrina, Louisiana, in America, the animals were all thrown out, floating bodies, or they died in starvation. Animal birth control laws should be very strongly implemented, and if any MLA, ward councillor, or sarpanch fails to do that, they must be penalized. The funding for the ABC should be directly allocated and reports assessed and work supervised by the local animal lover communities. This is what all I wish.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this wonderful and insightful discussion with us. We are very much delighted to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and any forum which helps me talk about what I feel, I respect that and honor that. Thank you very much, and all the best wishes for Behrampur University to grow bigger and bigger and larger than most of the big named universities in the country.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much.
Thank you.